Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter for boxing-related tweets, or you can subscribe to the channel and click that notifications button whenever a new video is uploaded. I've already uploaded a couple of videos today, one on WBO's revised position regarding the heavyweight undisputed championship of the world. Let me know what your position is on that, if you're excited about that. It also discusses Lopez and Haney and Kambosos on what's going on there with the Trident, and a few other things, Mayweather and so on and so forth. So let me know what your opinions are on the general roundup. There's also a video about Alan the Savage Babbage and him recovering, or in the process of recovering, from shoulder surgery. He expects to be back in May. And there's talk of David Price and also Lucas Brown as potential opponents. So I just want to talk about that and how you think he would fare in those fights. I've given a brief breakdown. It's not a detailed technical breakdown, but it's just to hear people's opinions on these things. This one is also about hearing your opinion. It's about an appetite for older sort of veteran fighters and whether you'd be interested in a veteran tournament or veteran league. So, imagine like a Super 6, but with retired fighters, maybe guys over the age of 50 who have been retired for at least 5-6 years, guys that are not active anymore. We've seen Mike Tyson fight Roy Jones. That was officially given as a draw. To me, that looked like a strict exhibition. It wasn't, to me, it didn't look real. There were too many situations there where you had something on. I saw a couple of more than 2-3 situations where I thought Roy Jones was in range for a hook and wasn't protected. And Tyson seemed to purposely target that body. He didn't turn his hand over. He wasn't ripping the body as hard as he could, and vice versa. There were moments where Mike Tyson seemed to have been in line with a Roy Jones right hand, and Roy would throw it gently and just sort of step out as he was throwing it. It didn't seem like they were really going for it, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just age catching up on them, and that is their limitations now at this age. But to me, it looked like there were things on that they were choosing not to go for. But it sparked other fighters wanting to do these things. Glenn McCrory was interested in fighting Johnny Nelson, apparently. He wanted to fight Evander Holyfield, and that seems to be on now. That fight seems to be happening. You've also had Shannon Briggs calling out on Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield. Shannon Briggs looks like the best of them, by the way, the sharpest in sparring and on the bag and things like that. If there was a tournament between these old great fighters, at the moment I would be fancying Shannon Briggs from the guys that have been mentioned. He looks like he's in the best form. I'm sure James Toney's also thrown his interest, his name in the hat as potential interest for these things. But it's not limited to these great former fighters. It's not just people harking back to yesteryear. This is not like a like a WWE situation whereby you've got Ric Flair coming back to fight Hulk Hogan or Ultimate Warrior or something like that. It's this. Take Mick Theo, for instance. Mickey Theo was a doorman in London. He was a famous bodybuilder. If you're into bodybuilding, he was a known name on the bodybuilding scene. He was known as a tough guy in the underground, the underworld, shall we say, of London. He was a known guy. You'd have heard of his name growing up in London. But like I said, he wasn't a trained. I mean, he might have been trained. He engaged in boxing. I know that for sure. He'd spar a lot of guys. He would, as far as I'm aware, he'd be sparring guys that were pro fighters too. But he wasn't a pro fighter himself. He was just a tough guy on the streets, and that doesn't mean he can't handle himself, because from what I've heard, like I said, when I was a kid, he was a very tough man. But the fact of the matter is, people are now following his beef with John Fury, who was a heavyweight fighter, a pro fighter, not hugely successful, but a heavyweight fighter. Nonetheless, and of course the father of Tyson Fury, and we know that he's a very explosive, loud character, and that captured the imagination. A lot of people were interested in seeing that fight. There was a lot of back and forth, even more recently, up until this month. Mick Theo's still calling out John Fury. He still wants that fight. He was saying that the offer to fight him in Billy Joe Saunders' backyard or in a gym in Manchester was just silly. He wanted to fight on neutral ground and stuff like that. So he's still pushing for that fight, and it has captured the imagination. There are many, many people that comment on it. There are many people that will comment to say, "Shut up, Mick, you're going to get battered." There are other people that are saying he'd take John Fury and John Fury's all mouth and stuff like that. Even those that are talking like that are saying this is dumb, they're still commenting. So it's generating interest. So I want to know if you have an interest in seeing like a veterans type league or knockout scenario, and if so, is it just former pro fighters that you want to watch? Is it guys that are big personalities like John Fury fighting a guy like Mick Theo? Has that captured the imagination for you? What is it about this that you want to watch? Because they definitely don't move in the way that they used to move as younger men. That's logical. They definitely don't perform in the way a heavyweight fighter would perform. None of these guys would be able to compete, with all due respect to them, against a journeyman heavyweight of today. You know, Tom Little, for instance, they've got no chance against Tom Little. They just don't move as well. They just don't. It's just a reality. They're too stiff now. You know, your body changes as you get older. And yet there's this clamoring to see a lot of these older great fighters, as well as older fighters that aren't necessarily great fighters or even pro fighters, but they're big personalities. Is this a reflection of what's happening with the YouTube fighters? I'm actually going to do a video discussing something asked by a lot of people to discuss the Paul brothers as well as the man Mountain from Game of Thrones. I don't mind doing a technical analysis, talking about where they're strong, where, you know, where they've shown good attributes and where they really need to improve. That doesn't mean they're anywhere near the level of top level pro fighters, and yet it captures the imagination. Is this a case of, you know, personalities superseding quality? You'd expect that with YouTubers, but what about hardcore boxing fans? Why is it capturing their imaginations? Are you one of those boxing fans? I want to hear from you. Thanks for watching. Chat to you soon. God bless.